Okay, here we are. Welcome, Scott Melker, to the Magic Internet Money Podcast,
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
and possibly a cross episode if that's approved.
Indeed.
So, I was following you a little bit on Twitter. I think you started to appear in my newsfeed maybe a year ago. And I admit I'm one of those people that used to think this guy's just some altcoin like charlatan or whatever. Then I started to pay closer attention to you, and it came up pretty obviously that you're not one of those like anonymous clout chaser people that came in the 2017 bubble. Like, you're actually a talented analyst, and like you like Bitcoin. So I'm typically a Bitcoin maximalist, so I wanted to have you on, have a conversation with you to present maybe a good pro Bitcoin side that some of these Bitcoiners think, oh, this guy's just like a altcoin shill or something like that. Sure, you trade altcoins, but you believe in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, I mean, even as a trader, I think I've been really transparent about the fact that I only trade with a minimal percentage of my portfolio. So I learned a very long time ago when trading stocks that investing was far more profitable and statistically far better for almost every person on this planet than trading. Early on, I had good people to teach me that you were a degenerate if you traded with your entire stack. So I only trade with roughly 15% of my stack. 70% is Bitcoin holds. I mean, that'll sometimes range from like 60 to 70%, and maybe I'll throw in like 10% Ethereum or something like that, but something large cap that I believe in. 15% cash and 15% to trade. So even if I'm fully maxed on my, altcoin trading, it's only 15% of my crypto portfolio that's even exposed. So that's actually a really pretty large misconception probably of me, perhaps just because of the way I tweet or the trades that I tweet about. But yeah, I believe in Bitcoin. I believe that Bitcoin is the market, sort of like buying an ETF and tracking the stock market, like buying the SPY or something like that. Markets rise over time generally. So I'm not going to try to outthink myself. I'm just going to keep buying Bitcoin.
So you said you had learned this early lesson that investing is better than trading. What was the early lesson that you learned?
Well, I mean, my parents taught me that when I was young. I was buying stocks as a young teenager. And so I had exposure sort of to good financial lessons. And I went to the University of Pennsylvania in the late 90s. So being, around the Wharton School at that time when it was really sort of the Wall Street, not bubble, but that's when it was just absolutely hot to, go become an investment banker or management consultant or something, then move towards private equity and hedge funds. That's what a lot of my friends did somewhat successfully. I mean, getting a job in an investment bank coming out of Penn in the 1990s was like getting Halloween candy at someone's door on Halloween. You know what I mean? It was just like they were handing them out, throwing them out. Here you go. My big brother in my fraternity and his big brother both worked at Solomon Smith Barney. And so the guy who was 2 years ahead of me was the recruiter at Penn. He hired my big brother in my fraternity, whatever. And then I didn't even have a resume. And my big brother was like, "You want a job at Solomon Smith Barney?" And I was like, "No, not at all, actually." But I didn't even have a resume, and they basically offered me a job. It was that easy to go the Wall Street route. Needless to say, that's off topic, but I got a lot of exposure to finance and
Did you
investing.
end up going to any of the banks or anything?
No, I had started an internet company with three friends from college called phillytonight.com. I was in Philadelphia, and it was kind of like a people don't remember City Search anymore, but at the time it was sort of a nightlife and bar restaurant guide for Philadelphia and something we were expanding beyond the city. So I focused on that and DJing, which is kind of the hobby I'd picked up in college and what I really stuck with for the bulk of my career. But those investment lessons we're talking about were learned early from family, from friends, and then, later kind of mentors, and also just losing a ton of money. Like, trading is a tough game, and over a very long period of time, it exposes all of your weaknesses and emotional instabilities and problems. I can make a living trading at this point, doing it with a smaller part of my portfolio, but it would be an absolute lie to say that I could have started with zero and gotten there. That money had to be made somewhere else to be capitalized well enough to trade with appropriate size and make a living.
By the way, like I was telling you on Telegram there, I searched up your SoundCloud. I got a new favorite SoundCloud artist here. The Ball and Oates, a mix of the Wu-Tang Clan and Hall and Oates. Is that what it was mostly?
Yeah, that was one of them. So there are 5 tracks on that
Is
EP.
it all Wu-Tang Clan or
No, it's all Hall and Oates. So I basically It was a theme I did across a number of EPs. I did a Michael Jackson one, the Beatles, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, the Red Hot Chili Peppers one is amazing. So I got a chance to listen through both of those records, if they're whatever you call them, and they're amazing. I love them.
So conceptually, what I wanted to do was take a catalog of an artist that I loved that probably was not being exposed to a younger audience as a DJ and sort of flip it in a way that would make it familiar and accessible. So I took all the Hall& Oates songs and I replayed all the instruments, mostly on a keyboard. But on most of those remixes, I'm replaying the different parts of the songs, flipping the drums to make them more hip hop. And then to really make it more accessible, I would find a familiar a cappella or a vocal from another track and mix it in there. So it's kind of like a full remix and replay. And then on top of that, a familiar vocal to kind of make it more palatable. And those went crazy, crazy, crazy viral. I mean, actually,
When did you release them?
that must have been 2014, 15, 16 were the years I was doing those.
So what were you saying? They went viral and the guy from Hall& Oates, like, was tweeting it or something?
We were in an article in Billboard together. I mean, those projects were every mainstream media source. You know, they were like on NBC News. People were talking about them and stuff. It was really a crazy kind of moment in time and a lot of fun. So it was crazy. I also then ended up getting in a lot of trouble because of copyright issues, but that's for a different podcast, I guess.
So, have you been at it still, or are you kinda getting back into it, or the trading is just keeping up most of your time now?
Yeah, well, now in isolation, there'd be no chance. It's funny, all these single people with no kids are like, I'm so bored in isolation. I don't know what I'm going to do. And anyone with kids is basically like, doesn't have a single second to yourself. I have a 1 year old and a 5 year old. I mean, this is like absolute carnage and mayhem over here because you're the teacher, you're the cleaner, you're the cook, and you're doing your job, right? So I always joke, like, if I was single right now, I would have probably put out 40 albums by now. I'm not even kidding. The velocity at which I can do work with my like crazy ADD. You know, ADD, you're usually scattered, but you can get very hyper focused. Music was kind of a cure to ADD for me. I could start doing music and you catch me 12 hours later and I've come out and I'm like, here's 10 new songs. I would have done all that. And now I haven't touched music in really years. I mean, last year for fun, I DJ'd my mother-in-law's 70th birthday party and my 5 year old DJ'd with me. But that's the closest I've come to like DJing and playing music in well over a year.